Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We're gathered together in fellowship on this seventh Yom or sixth of the sixth month. We have about 3 more weeks to go before Yom Teruah, so looking forward to that. And we are finishing up, Abba willing, the last section in the Apostolic Constitutions covering the heresies, which is a segue from what we were reading, which is Irenaeus's 5 books against heresies, is what they're commonly called. He titled it something different. I believe it was Against Knowledge Falsely So Called, or a refutation of knowledge falsely so called, or against Gnosticism, basically. But here we are. This is from book 7 of the Apostolic Constitutions, section 5, and it's starting on chapter 26. It's the teaching of the sent ones or the emissaries in opposition to the Yahudi and Gentile superstitions, especially in regard to marriage and funerals, that we ought to avoid the heretics as the corrupters of inner beings, or what they commonly call souls. It says, you should therefore, O overseer, and you of the laity, which is a Romance language name for the people. If you recall, there's actually a people called the Laetim, and they were the people, just like the Deutsch is of the people. And the Alemanni is the all men, or all the men of the people. It has to do with the people of Elohim again, if you recall. But it says, and you of the laity, which the Nicolaitans were those that were conquerors over the people, right? It says, you should therefore, overseer, and you of the laity, avoid all heretics who abuse the law and the foretellers, for they are enemies to El Shaddai, and disobey him, and do not confess Mashiach to be the son of El, for they also deny his generation according to the flesh. They are ashamed of the stake. They abuse his passion and his death. They know not his resurrection. They take away his generation before all ages. It says in scripture that our Mashiach is the firstborn of creation. And it says it's a heresy to take away his generation before all the ages. Nay, some of them are impious after another manner, imagining Yahuwah to be a mere man, supposing him to consist of an inner being and body. But others of them suppose that Yahushua himself is the El over all, and esteem him as his own father, and suppose him to be both the Son and the Comforter. Then which doctrines, what can be more detestable? And this is when you take one and make them 3 in one, or when you divide one into 2, or when you attribute the things that he said otherwise than as he said. This is what he's talking about, that it's a problem. Just a moment. Others again of them do refuse certain meats, and say that marriage with the procreation of children is evil, and the contrivance of the devil. And being unrighteous themselves, they are not willing to rise again from the dead on account of their wickedness. Wherefore they ridicule the resurrection and say, we are set apart people, unwilling to eat and to drink. And they fancy that they shall rise again from the dead, demons without flesh. When they say demons, they mean disembodied ruach, or spirits, right? Who shall be condemned forever in eternal fire. Fly therefore from them, lest you perish with them in their impieties. Now, if any persons keep to the Yahudi customs and observances concerning the natural emission and nocturnal pollutions and the lawful conjugal acts, which is in Leviticus 15, let them tell us whether in those hours or days when they undergo any such thing, They observe not to pray or to touch the scriptures or a scriptures or to partake of the bread and wine. And if they own it to be so, it is plain they are void of the set apart ruach, which always continues with the trustworthy. For concerning set apart persons, Shalomo says that everyone may prepare himself, that so when he sleeps, it may keep him, and when he arises, it may talk with him. Proverbs 6:22. And here, sleep is used as a euphemism for death, but it's true in every context. When you are doing his will, you have rest and contentment when you sleep. For if you think, O woman, when you are 7 days or yamim in your separation, that you are void of the set apart ruach, then if you should die suddenly, you will depart void of the ruach and without assured expectation in Elohim. Now, this is where believing wrong can have a very detrimental effect. And this is why we have to be very careful not to think beyond what is written. Because if we put limitations on his word that he didn't, we hurt ourselves here. And this is the remedy for this kind of thing. It says, or else you must imagine that the ruach always is inseparable from you, as not being in a place, but you stand in need of prayer and the bread and wine, and of the coming of the set apart ruach, as having been guilty of no fault in this matter. For neither lawful mixture, nor childbearing, nor the menstrual purgation, nor nocturnal pollution can defile the nature of a man, or separate the Kodesh Ruach from him. Nothing but impiety and unlawful practice can do that. What comes from the heart defiles us, if you recall what our Mashiach said. For the set apart Ruach always abides with those that are possessed of it, so long as they are worthy, and those from whom it is departed, it leaves them desolate and exposed to the wicked Ruach or spirit. Now every man is filled either with the Kodesh Ruach or with the unclean spirit. And there's over 22 pages worth of scriptures that talk about the two ways, the way of light and the way of darkness, the way of Melchizedek or the way of Malki-Rasha, the king of righteousness or the king or sovereign of evil, if you will. And there's a great multitude in a variety of places, all the way from the book of Henoch, in Yobelim, the vision of Amram, the shepherd of Hermas, the testament of Yahuda, as well as the testaments of Asher and some others, the Apostolic Constitutions, the Epistle of Barnabas, the recognitions of Clement. I mean, literally all over the whole breadth of Scripture, you have this theme of the two Ruachos, or the two spirits, the way of light and the way of dark, and that it's our ability to choose which one we're a partaker of. But it says, now every man is filled either with the Kodesh Ruach or with the unclean spirit, and it is not possible to avoid the one or the other unless they can receive opposite Ruachot. For the Comforter hates every lie, and the devil hates all truth. But everyone that is immersed agreeably to the truth is separated from the diabolical spirit and is under the Kodesh Ruach. And the set apart Ruach remains with him so long as he is doing tov, or pleasant, and fills him with prudence and comprehension, and suffers not the wicked spirit to approach him, but watches over his goings. You therefore, O woman, if, as you say, in the Yamim or days of your separation, you are void of the Kodesh Ruach, you are then filled with the unclean one. For by neglecting to pray and to read, meaning read the scriptures, not just whatever you want, but by neglecting to pray and to read, you will invite him to you, though he were unwilling. For this spirit of all others loves the ungrateful, the slothful, the careless, and the drowsy, since he himself by ingratitude was distempered with evil mind, and was thereby deprived by Elohim his dignity, having rather chosen to be a devil than a chief messenger. And if you remember, a devil is someone who stirs things up and accuses, right? Wherefore, O woman, eschew or cast away such vain words, and be ever mindful of Elohim that created you, and pray to him, for he is your master and Yahuwah of the universe, and meditate in his laws without observing any such things, such as the natural purgation, lawful mixture, childbirth, a miscarriage, or a blemish of the body, since such observations are the vain inventions of foolish men, and such inventions have no sense in them. Meaning the traditions of men superseding what he said to do. With the added bonds, there was purgations. When you touched a dead body or you touched something unclean, you had to go through certain rituals, perform certain oblations and sacrifices. And all of that was a carnal, earthly way of teaching ruachni, or spiritual things. We've covered that before, but when you touch the dead, when you sin, you become unclean, and it requires the cutting off of the light or the sacrifice of the lamb to cleanse you and make you well. These are simple things that are expounded on by Irenaeus and others after he came. The Epistle of Barnabas does a great job of showing a lot of these things as well. This is neither the burial of a man, nor a dead man's bone, nor a sepulchre, nor any particular sort of food, nor the nocturnal pollution. And that means no particular sort of meat or animal, because not all animals are food. But you can touch a pig and it won't make you abominable. There's no purgations or sacrifices to cleanse you. That's what is meant. It's not food, but everything is for the service of man. It says, nor any particular sort of food, nor the nocturnal pollution can defile the inner being of man, but only impiety towards Elohim and transgression and unrighteousness towards one's neighbor. I mean rapine, violence, or if there be anything contrary to his righteousness, adultery or fornication. Wherefore, beloved, avoid and eschew or cast away such observations, for they are heathenish. For we do not abominate a dead man, as do they, seeing we expect that he will live again. Nor do we hate lawful mixture, for it is their practice to act impiously in such instances. For the conjunction of a man and wife, if it be with righteousness, is agreeable to the mind of Elohim. For he that made them at the beginning made them male and female, and he baraked them and said, increase and multiply and fill the earth. Netanyahu 19:4, Bereshit 1:28. If therefore the difference of sexes was made by the will of El for the generation of multitudes, then must the conjunction of male and female be also acceptable to his mind. Yet we do not say so of that mixture that is contrary to nature, or of any unlawful practice, for such are enmity to Elohim. For the sin of Sodom is contrary to nature, as is also that with brute beasts, but adultery and fornication are against the law. The one whereof is impiety, the other unrighteous, and in a word, no other than a great sin. Meaning there's a difference, and this is something that our founders for this nation were quite familiar with, between the laws of nature and the law of Elohim, nature's El. The laws of nature are what's practical and evident, self-evident through the nature of things. Everyone has a right to defend themselves. Every animal would defend itself, and it's what it considers its own. It's an unalienable right. endowed by our Creator. But it's a law of our Creator that supersedes the law of nature that we turn the other cheek, that we do not seek revenge. So in the same way, there's certain laws that are standard to nature itself. And then there's what he said that for a man of a rational mind to do beyond what is just an animal is capable of. This is, yet neither sort of them is without its punishment in its own proper nature, meaning adultery and fornication, right? For the practicers of one sort attempt the dissolution of the world and endeavor to make the natural course of things to change for one that is unnatural. But those of the second sort, the adulterers, are unrighteous by corrupting others' marriages and dividing into two what Elohim has made one, rendering the children suspected and exposing the true husband to the snares of others. And fornication is the destruction of one's own flesh, not being made use of for the proper procreation of children, but entirely for the sake of pleasure, which is a mark of incontinency, and a sign, and not a sign of virtue. All these things are forbidden by the laws, for thus say the oracles, you shall not lie with mankind as with womankind, for such a one is accursed, and you shall stone them with stones. They have wrought abomination. Every one that lies with a beast, slay him. He has wrought wickedness in his people. And if anyone defile a married woman, slay them both. They have wrought wickedness, they are guilty. Let them die, and afterwards there shall not be a fornicator among the children of Israel, and there shall not be an harlot. There's another use of an un instead of a with an H word. That's something you'll see more in these older writings, but not in modern English anymore. And there shall not be an harlot among the daughters of Israel. You shall not offer the hire of an harlot to Yahuwah, your Elohim, upon the altar, nor the price of a dog. For the vows arising from the hire of an harlot are not clean. And if you remember, dogs are equated to false foretellers, and also those that were his accusers and revilers around him as he hung on the execution stake for our benefit. They were called bulls and dogs in Psalm 22. These things the laws have forbidden, but they have honored marriage and have called it Baruch, since Elohim has Baruch it, who joined male and female together. And prudent Shalomo somewhere says, the wife is suited to her husband by Yahuwah. And Dawid says, your wife is like a flourishing vine in the sides of your house, your children like olive branches round about your table. Behold, thus shall the man be Baruch that fears Yahuwah, or reveres Yahuwah. Wherefore marriage is honorable and comely, and the begetting of children pure, for there is no evil in that which is told. Therefore, neither is the natural purgation abominable before Elohim, who has ordered it to happen to women within the space of 30 yamim, or days, for their advantage and healthful state, who do less move about and keep usually at home in the house. Nay, moreover, even in the Basora, when the women with the perpetual purgation of blood touched the delivering border of the master's garment in expectation of being healed, he was not angry at her, nor did complain of her at all. But on the contrary, he healed her, saying, your belief has delivered you. And she believed that he would arise with healing in his wings as the son of righteousness, coming right from the foretellers there. When the natural purgations do appear in the wives, let not their husbands approach them, out of regard to the children to be begotten. For the law has forbidden it, For it says, you shall not come near your wife when she is in her separation. Leviticus 18:19, Ezekiel 18:6. Basically, when you stay away for a week, and if she continues beyond a week, you go until she stops. You just abstain. It's pretty simple. Nor indeed let them frequent their wives' company when they are with child, for they do this not for the begetting of children, but for the sake of pleasure. Now a lover of Elohim ought not to be a lover of pleasure. You wives, be subject to your own husbands, and have them in esteem, and serve them with reverence and love, as set apart Sarah honored Abraham, for she could not endure to call him by his name, but called him master, when she said, my master is old. In like manner, you husbands, love your own wives as your own members, as partners in existence and fellow helpers for the procreation of children. For, says he, rejoice with the wife of your youth. Let her conversation be to you as a loving hind and a pleasant fowl. Let her alone guide you and be with you at all times. For if you are every way encompassed with her friendship, you will be happy in her society. Love them, therefore, as your own members, as your very bodies. For so it is written, Yahuwah has testified or has witnessed between you and between the wife of your youth, and she is your partner, and no other has made her, and she is the remains of your ruach. And take heed to your ruach, and do not forsake the wife of your youth. An husband, therefore, and a wife, when they company together in lawful marriage, and rise from one another, may pray without any observations, and without washing are clean. But whosoever corrupts and defiles another man's wife, or is defiled with an harlot, when he arises up from her, though he should wash himself in the entire ocean and all the rivers, cannot be clean. All right, so section 6, the conclusion of the work. That it is the custom of the Yahudim and nations to observe natural purgations and to abominate the remains of the dead, but that all this is contrary to Nazarene, or the branches, the believers. In the common scriptures, it tells you that they were first called Christians, or in Antioch, and whether or not that's the Christian as the good man, or the establishment of the Theodosian Codex and the enforcement of the Catholic doctrines there, I can't say for certain. But when you go through the rest of what's in Scripture, they call themselves the branches or the Nazarene, which is what our Mashiach said. You are the Nazarene, right? And also, Shaul calls himself a follower of the way.
Yeah, that's the way.
Which is our Mashiach, who is the truth, the way, and the existence, or the Chaim. But chapter 30 says, do not therefore keep any such observances about legal and natural purgations, as thinking you are defiled by them. Neither do you seek after Yahudi separations, or perpetual washings, or purifications upon the touch of a dead body. But without such observations, assemble in the dormitories, which it could be assemble in the assemblies. This dormitories has to do with monks and things of that nature, which was not mentioned by them at all. But without such observations, assemble in the assemblies, reading the set apart books, and singing for the martyrs which are fallen asleep, for all the set apart ones from the beginning of the world, and for your brethren that are asleep in Yahuwah. And offer the acceptable bread and wine, the representation of the royal body of Mashiach, both in your assemblies and in the dormitories, or in the homes, and in the funerals of the departed, accompany them with singing, if they were trustworthy in Mashiach. For precious in the sight of Yahuwah is the death of his set-apart ones. And again, O my inner being, return unto your rest, for Yahuwah has done you Tov. And elsewhere, the memory of the righteous is with ecumenis, or with favor, Proverbs 10:7. And the inner beings of the righteous are in the hands of Elohim. That's Chokmah Shalomo, or Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 3, verse 1. For those that have believed in Elohim, they are asleep, or although they are asleep, are not dead. For our deliverer says to the Sadducees, yet concerning the resurrection of the dead, have you not read that which is written? I am the Elohim of Abraham, and the Elohim of Yitzhak, and the Elohim of Yaakov. Elohim, therefore, is not the Elohim of the dead, but of the existing or living, for all exist to him. And that's in Shemot, or Exodus 3:6, and also Luke chapter 20, verse 38. And last week we covered quite a bit of information talking about what happens when we die and the habitation of the inner beings of the righteous. So it's just in agreement with that as well. Wherefore, of those that exist with Elohim, even their very remains are not without honor. For even Elisha, the foreteller, after he was fallen asleep, raised up a dead man who was slain by the pirates of Syria, or Armenia. For his body touched the bones of Elisha, and he arose and revived. Now this would not have happened unless the body of Elisha were set apart. And chaste Yahusuf embraced Yaakov after he was dead upon his bed. And this is speaking of his son, what they called Joseph, Yahusuf. When Yaakov, or Yisrael, had died, he embraced him. The same thing that Yaakov, when he woke up in the bosom of Abraham and he was dead, was already touching him. Neither one of them were considered unclean. And Moshe and Yahushua, the son of Nun, carried away the remains of Yahusuf and did not esteem it a defilement. Whence you also, O overseers, and the rest, who without such observations touch the departed, ought not to think yourselves defiled, nor abhor the remains of such persons, but avoid such observances, for they are foolish, and adorn yourselves with set apartness and chastity, that you may become partakers of immorality and partners of the reign of Elohim, and may receive the promise of Elohim and may have rest forever, through Yahushua Mashiach, our deliverer. To him, therefore, who is able to open the ears of your hearts to the receiving of the oracles of Elohim, administered to you both by the Tov news, or the Besorah, and by the teaching of Yahushua Mashiach of Nazareth, who was impaled under Pontius Pilate and Herod, and died and rose again from the dead, and will come again at the end of the world with power and great esteem, and will raise the dead and put an end to this world, and distribute to every one according to his deserts, to him that has given us himself for an earnest of the resurrection, who was taken up into the Shamayim by the power of his El and Abba in our sight, who ate and drank with him for 40 yamim, or days, after he arose from the dead, who is sat down on the right hand of the throne of the majesty of El Shaddai upon the cherubim, to whom it is said, sit on my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool, whom the most Baruch Stephen saw standing at the right hand of power, and cried out and said, behold, I see the Shamayim opened, and the son of Adam standing at the right hand of Elohim. Acts 7:56. As the high Kohen of all the rational orders, through him worship and majesty and esteem be given to El Shaddai, both now and forevermore. Amen. And that is the end of the heresies section of the Apostolic Constitutions. which is in Book 6, sections 1 through section 5.